If you compare a system that delivers clicks, which is Google, which is a system that delivers answers like ChatGPT, of course you cannot compare them based on the traffic that you receive on your website. But if you look at companies that do their attribution based on asking people, where did you hear about us? You will notice that 20% is a very common number for them, even 20% of overall traffic being AI.
What do you think why people still think about or perceive AI search as this black box where we don't really know how this all works?
I don't get it either, because with traditional SEO, it was also all about reverse engineering and finding out what works and testing and doing it. And you can use the exact same pattern with AI search.
Before we dive in, you're listening to the Masters of Search podcast with me, your host, Niklas Buschner. Each week, I sit down with some of the smartest people around the world in SEO and AI search to bring you their strategies, mental models, and top pieces of actionable advice. If you enjoy this podcast, don't forget to like and subscribe and follow it in your favorite podcasting app or YouTube. It helps us get top-notch guests and create the best possible content for you. Let's dive into today's episode.
It is time again for my favorite format in this podcast, the Masters of Search podcast. It is time for Monthly Landwehr. And for Monthly Landwehr, I have my good friend Malte Landwehr here with me, who is CMO and CPO at Peec AI, one of the leading AI search analytics platforms. And the good thing is that we have a full pad with a lot of things we want to talk about. And the even better thing is that Malte is super relaxed, super chill, because you just came back from vacation, right?
Yeah, I just spent 2 weeks in the US, 1 week in Florida visiting my family, and then 1 week cruising around the Caribbean.
Awesome.
Caribbean.
And could you stop thinking about AI search a little bit?
Sometimes.
Okay, because now is the time to go into the trenches again. So I have a couple of things that we brought together that happened during the last weeks. And I would like to start with an analysis that I think our mutual friend, Ethan Smith from Graphite, from the Great San Francisco did, which is titled AI is Much Bigger Than You Think, where he basically looked at the hypothesis if AI or AI search and organic search cannibalize each other. So if it's the same pie or if the pie is getting bigger. First question, did you also find this significant? Like, were you surprised by his findings?
Yes, I was. Ethan is known for his very rigorous testing. And usually when I do like a quick analysis, just doing something, then he's the one who's like very critical. Can you replicate it? Can you publish the data? How real is this number? And he only publishes things when he is very, 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 very certain that everything is correct. And his study is a bit of an outlier. Like if you look at other studies, SEO Clarity arrived at like 15% share, Ahrefs and Peec AI arrived at 12% share of ChatGPT, and then Ethan is at like 20% with his study. And it's in the same ballpark. But it's a higher number, right? And then we also have the other end of the spectrum where we have Rand Fishkin from SparkToro, who thinks it's like 4 to 5%. And then we have some people in between, like, I don't know, Systrix did a study that's somewhere in between. I'm sure there are some others. And it's interesting to see that somebody who is as rigorous in his testing and numbers as Ethan came up with the highest number here. But there must be something to it if he is doing it, because he's not a hype guy, not somebody who exaggerates. So yeah, I was surprised that he came up with 20%.
Before we dive into the data a little bit more, let's take a quick step back for everybody that is not familiar with the study. Could you quickly explain to our listeners what Ethan analyzed? Like, what was the hypothesis that he looked at?
Yeah, I mean, the question is always what percentage of the search market is actually AI search, or what percentage of the search market is actually ChatGPT. And then different studies take different approaches. Like some look for the market share, some look what is the size of ChatGPT in comparison to Google, which can also explain some of the differences of the percentages. And I believe he used a similar web data, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, you have to always make some assumptions, because for ChatGPT, we don't have search volume, right? We have their total usage, and then we can make assumptions or use data as far as it's available. What percentage of the prompts is probably search? Then you have the problem that in ChatGPT, one prompt can replace 20 Google searches. So how do you weight this against each other? And then, of course, you have the complexity that depending on what study you trust, in Google itself, 15 to 50% of searches already contain an AI overview. And based on most external data, it's very difficult to estimate the size of the AI mode in Google. So yeah, that is what he tried to measure here. How
And
big is AI search?
And what do you think why this hasn't been done before? Because my impression was that the question he tried to answer is super obvious. Like, simply put, how big is AI in comparison to search? Like, how big is AI search in comparison to classic organic search? Why didn't people look at this before? Because the finding is pretty substantial for our industry, right?
Yeah, I mean, people did, right? Like the Peec AI number I cited, it was actually me doing it a few months ago. SEO Clarity, Ahrefs, Systrix all tried to do it. But of course, Ethan's study is, I think, the most robust. He invested the most time there. And it's also the most recent one. Because some of the numbers I cited are a couple of months old from other studies. So I think others have tried, but usually when anybody publishes this, people tend to dismiss it. Like, they don't see it in their referrer traffic, so it can't be true. But of course, if you compare a system that delivers clicks, which is Google, with a system that delivers answers like ChatGPT, of course, you cannot compare them based on the traffic that you receive on your website. But if you look at companies that do their attribution based on asking people, where did you hear about us? You will notice that 20% is a very common number for them, even 20% of overall traffic being AI. So, or being AI search, to be more specific. So it really depends on whom you ask, whether they are like, yeah, meh, or renew it. And on the other hand, people, this can't be true. I get my clicks from Google. ChatGPT can only be like 1% of traffic. So I think it's been done before. He did it a bit more robust, a bit more complete. Maybe finally this number will become mainstream. But of course, there are also people like Rand Fishkin already disagreeing with it, which is not helping with getting the truth out there.
And what do you think why, for example, Rand Fishkin disagrees?
I think Rand looks a little bit differently at the data. I have nothing but respect for Rand, but I mean, he's also a person who says this email is written without AI, or I will never write by email, right? Like, he has a bit of a bias, maybe, and maybe I have the same bias, just like that I'm pro AI. So I don't want to dismiss his point of view. But out of all the studies that were all done by respected people, right, like the Systrix numbers from Johannes Beuys, the Ahrefs numbers, the SEO Clarity numbers, these are all respected people in the industry. They all reached multiple times higher numbers, like double the number of Rand Fishkin, 3 times his numbers. I just believe he has a very pessimistic view on AI, and maybe that influences how he interprets the data, or maybe he just looks at a different data set.
And would you agree that Ethan's study, and also probably the Peec AI study and other data, that it somehow that it was contrary to the general sentiment in the market, so that the market would rather have the idea of, yeah, AI is not so big as some people say it is?
I mean, of course, all established SEO players, all companies that depend on SEO traffic, so all publishers, all affiliates, they don't like this narrative, right? They want clicks from traditional web search to remain there. And of course, also people working at Google, for example, probably don't want this narrative that search isn't happening elsewhere, because that would mean that advertising budgets will also shift if the narrative or the perception shifts. And of course, many people are afraid of a world that is changing, because if you used to measure your work with the visibility of a website in a search engine, or with the number of clicks or leads or conversions that followed a click that is easily attributable, of course, with the AI search, everything is different. So I believe people prefer the lower numbers, the lower studies that say like 1%, 4%, 5%, because it gives them more safety. So yeah, definitely, it's a narrative violation for many people if you say it's 10%, it's 20%. They need it to be 5% to be able to sleep at night.
So you're obviously surrounded by people that also believe in the narrative of AI, no matter if we talk about AI as a tool or as a channel, is significant, is substantial, and will have huge impact. What would you say to someone that is still maybe caught in this old narrative, or that maybe correctly sees the threat for their business model and sees the threat for their previous SEO motion that was dependent on click? What would you say to them, or how would you help them to maybe also come to the conclusion that they have to act and that they have to move into a certain direction? Because I also often talk to people that are still hesitant, skeptic, unsure.
I mean, sharing studies like the ones that I cited above can be helpful, I think. And if you look at the timeline, you will also see that apart from the Rand Fishkin study, the numbers increased over time. Personally, I think that my original study that arrived at the 12% already explains the misconception, but apparently it didn't convince people. So I did that wrong. So I may be also the wrong person to ask this. What I find very helpful is when people look at self-reported attribution. So asking every new user, asking every new lead, hey, where did you hear about us? And then seeing where AI search ends up. Of course, this is not perfect data, and especially people coming from performance marketing don't like it. They want to attribute every single session, but people with a brand marketing background are often much more open to receiving it. And I would also suggest just to look at the most successful people in your network and look at how they work. And I'm very, very sure for the majority of people, they will realize that these people use AI a lot. I don't know anybody who has started using Claude, started digging into MCPs, command line interfaces, who then went back to say, yeah, it's all trash, I don't want to do it. The people who looked at AI and didn't adapt it usually used like, I don't know, a free version of ChatGPT or Perplexity or something a year ago, which, yeah, was sometimes trash. But nowadays, it is just part of everybody's daily business if they care about efficiency and access to information. And I just cannot see that going away. And I mean, it's not just the search aspect, right? We also had feedback like, yeah, I put your contract into Claude and asked it to look for problems. It said, I can sign this contract. So I signed it. Like, okay. So apparently it's important and people use it for important decisions.
Speaking of Claude, perfect unscripted bridge here from your side. How surprised were you by the recent rise of Claude?
Very. I mean, it is the by far best system you can use right now. But I think a lot of the hype from, I would say, like average users who are not power users comes from the debate in the US about supporting the US military versus not supporting them or complying with orders from the White House. And I did not expect that to happen. And then also in general, OpenAI somehow dropped the ball on marketing, on PR, on how they are perceived. Right now, for the second time, there are these allegations against Sam Altman in the media, and Anthropic just managed to have constantly good PR. And I mean, it's not organic, right? Like, for example, right now there is the story trending that there was their new model that did the jailbreak and got internet access and then sent an email to a researcher who was eating a sandwich. I mean, these stories do not just happen, right? Like, somebody is seeding them. And Anthropic has been incredibly good in the past at doing that and constantly having these like hype stories and an LLM broke this benchmark or tricked its way around this security thing. And I think it's very noticeable that a few months ago, more Anthropic employees became active on X, formerly Twitter, and started gaining visibility. And for some reason, OpenAI is just not doing anything, when the reality is that at a daily driver for people who don't need MCPs or don't need engineering like support with Claude Code, OpenAI is still, or ChatGPT is still a very good solution for your everyday needs. But yeah, they somehow dropped the ball there. Started, I think, around January when their user numbers potentially started to decline. And then really accelerated when there was this White House military debate where OpenAI and Anthropic were perceived very, very differently by the public.
Maybe for everybody that is listening and that has somehow heard about Claude and okay, Claude is somehow growing now, I quickly checked the numbers in SimilarWeb also, and gladly already we have March numbers available. And if you look at Claude AI, which is obviously just the website, but looking at all traffic worldwide, so this does not include the mobile app, but at least it's desktop and mobile, I can see that the visits to Claude.ai have grown 3x from January to March, which is pretty substantial. And then going back to one of your, maybe not favorite, but one of your clearest hypotheses, that Perplexity is basically in constant decline. In January, Claude and Perplexity were still somehow head to head. There has already been a little gap, but now Perplexity is like just gradually declining, whereas Claude is rising. So would you say that for Claude, it's basically just the perfect storm? So they have a superior product and then all the rest just fell into place, like on the one hand forced by them, like by PR stories, but on the other hand also just by randomness, like OpenAI pulling out of certain things, the whole Department of Defense thing happening?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of things. So their model is in a very good place right now. They built a very good ecosystem around it. And then, OpenAI started messing up. I mean, I think overtaking Perplexity was not a big challenge, just because Perplexity can do nothing. And yeah, I mean, if you look at the other LLMs, like Meta is not really doing anything. Gemini is still growing, but growing less extreme than Claude, but it's still significantly bigger if you look at desktop usage. And then Grok has its own problems with a founder that might discourage some people from using it. So I think it's just a very, very good situation for Anthropic at the moment.
And how do you look at the distribution of users? Because I had a conversation where someone asked me, but is this all professional usage or is it also consumer usage? And I found it an interesting thought because Claude is, I would say, mostly perceived as a professional's tool, whereas ChatGPT has somehow, I don't know if it was intended or if it just happened, has gotten this like perception of being rather a consumer tool. So how do you look at the rise of Claude between professional usage and consumer usage?
So based on the numbers that I am seeing, there is a much higher percentage of professional usage on Claude. Like Gemini is still about 4 times as big as Claude if you look at web usage. But in terms of clicks that can be attributed with the referrer, I see professional websites in the B2B space since last month getting the same amount of clicks from Gemini and Claude. So the professional usage on Claude must be higher. And of course, a lot of their community is very engineering driven. And then why would they use a second LLM for their other use cases? So yes, it's higher. But this increase over the last 3 months, I think it comes from regular users discovering it and starting to use it.
And how do you look at the whole like AI search aspect with Claude? So have you already had the chance to do some first tests and like compare how it behaves compared to ChatGPT? So which like domains it cites, etc. So if I look at, for example, the big publicly available studies around domains being cited, etc., it's oftentimes, at least from my perception, maybe it's wrong, looking at AI mode, AI overviews, now Gemini, and then still Perplexity, which is somehow legacy, and then ChatGPT. But I haven't seen a study yet on citations, for example, in Claude, or more of a deep dive into the AI search analytics aspect. So how do you think about that, or do you already have some thoughts or insights?
I mean, Claude is much more difficult to get data out of, because all the other systems, you can go to their website without a login, you can perform a search, you can come back with a different IP, you can do it again. Claude requires a login. That is the first level of complexity. So unless you want to maintain tens of thousands of free Claude accounts, you need to use the API, which is much, 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 much more expensive than using a proxy server and going to ChatGPT.com, for example, or Perplexity or Gemini. So that's why it's more difficult to obtain very large amounts of data. And I believe that's why nobody has done a study so far. From what I'm seeing, it's not a crazy outlier in compared to other LLMs. Usually when I look at a lot of LLMs, it's Microsoft Copilot who's the big outlier in terms of what sources it's using. And I also believe if you monitor data for 3 LLMs and you optimize based on that, very, very likely you will increase your visibility in all the major LLMs. So I would not obsess too much over, is Claude citing Wikipedia a little bit less often or more often? Because I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't have 100% market share, right? It's 25% of Gemini right now in terms of usage of the website on desktop. So yes, it's big. It's maybe the number 3 now, or it probably is the number 3 now, but it's not like it has 90% market share and you should stop optimizing for other systems. I mean, that would be a little bit like saying, I don't know, Bing has 10% market share, and let's say Bing would not rank Reddit as good as Google. You wouldn't say, I stop optimizing on Reddit because of Bing, like, right? You would still do it for Google. So yeah, I from what I'm seeing, the difference is not too extreme between Claude and other systems. And I don't think people should adapt their strategy because of the rise of Claude over the last couple of months.
But obviously, the citation data is what people obsess about. At least a lot of people cite these studies where Wikipedia is like a top source or Reddit is a top source. And I recently had multiple discussions where the same argument basically came up around AI search, which was, yeah, we don't really know yet how this all works. So, and I thought, yeah, we have a good idea already, right? So what do you think, for example, why people even in the SEO industry, so people that have SEO jobs, and I mean, they don't have GEO jobs or AEO jobs yet, but what do you think why people still think about or perceive AI search as this black box where we don't really know how this all works?
I don't get it either. Because with traditional SEO, it was also all about reverse engineering and finding out what works and testing and doing it. And then you do 10 things. And for maybe 2 of them, you know that they are good. And for 8 of them, you think that they are good. In reality, probably out of these 8 things, 2 are a complete waste of time and 1 is negative. But the other 5 were still good. So you did 7 good things in total out of 10. So you increased your visibility. And you can use the exact same pattern with AI search. And I think with SEO, once there was a best practice, there were 500 influencers repeating it and saying, yeah, this is the best practice, whether it was correct or not, right? Because they also often promote things that are wrong. But it gave people this reassurance. Okay, if 500 people say it, then it must be true. But with AI search, you have, 10, 20 people telling you how it works. And if you don't know them, if you have not been following them for the last 10 years, you might not believe them. But I'm also very confused by how often smart SEOs say, yeah, we don't know how this works. Nobody has figured this out. When I constantly see companies doing what I assume everybody knows what to do, and increasing the number of leads, increasing the number of clicks, making money off of this. So I really don't know why people always say we don't know what to do. And I mean, I also know you have clients who have done very, very well in AI search. And I really don't get it. I'm very confused by it. I think some aspect can be that sometimes with Google, you had people like John Mueller or Matt Cutts actually say, yeah, this works or this doesn't work. And we don't have that with AI search, apart from Bing a little bit sometimes, but otherwise nothing, right? There's 0. But the thing is, these spokespeople from search engines, they were never giving the best SEO advice, right? They were basically trying to prevent large brands from doing something really stupid. But otherwise, it was pretty basic advice. And if you wanted to be in the top 10% of SEOs, you had to sometimes do something that they say it doesn't work, right? And because they don't have the incentive to help people with SEO, right? They have the incentive to prevent large brands from spamming, and they have the incentive to disencourage spammers from doing stuff that makes search results worse for users. They don't have the incentive to give you good SEO advice or help you get the most traffic. So yeah, I'm a little bit perplexed by this whole situation. I know hundreds of people who know what to do and do it and are very, very successful with it. There are also now hundreds of people who actually have AEO or GEO or AI search in their job title in addition to SEO. But I think change is always tough and people are slow to adapt.
Yeah, I could also imagine, in addition to what you just said, that in the good old SEO days, so to say, all the tools, or basically all the tools, somehow came up from within the industry. So from people that were SEO practitioners and then built the tools for themselves and then made it bigger. And now with AI search, we suddenly had venture capital interest in this industry. And then if you look at also other examples of this situation, so if you look at Lab Coffee, for example, totally different business. So coffee business, quick, affordable coffee. There was also this big outrage about VC money coming into this business and destroying everything. So I could at least imagine that people have this inherent negative bias towards AI search because they feel like that there are a lot of people that basically just want to jump on the hype train and make quick money. Whereas on the other side, as you just said, there are documented, like well-documented and very transparent case studies already. But I think I discussed it with someone from your team, with Noah. I think it's just a matter of having like very transparent case studies and stories that are told about this really works, this is really substantial, you can grow a business based on that. It's not hype and it's not about just visibility, etc. It's about people going to these tools, asking questions, and then actually inquiring at your business or purchasing something. So, but yeah, maybe to close the topic, do you also feel like this whole VC topic could be something that some people have this like inner bias against?
I think the VC part is less of the problem. It's more like the people without an SEO background who pretend that they know what to do. And both on the GEO tool side and on the like agency influencer side, there are many, many people who sometimes with a lot of venture capital, but sometimes also on their own, now say, I'm no longer a crypto expert, I'm now an AI search expert. And they produce a lot of questionable insights, and not gonna name names, but there's also a very well-funded tool in the space that deleted some of their research repeatedly. Like they published research, everybody cited it, and then deleted it from their website. I don't know why they would do it if everything was correct. And of course, we have people at conferences who have no SEO background now telling people how AI search works, where I often think they over-rely on an oversimplified narrative, like just do these three things, or I ran this quick statistic and this is how it works. And then you have the people who think that mass-producing content is the solution and promote that, where everybody who has been in SEO for a while already knows it's going to go up and then it's going to go down. And so there's a lot of bad advice in the space. And maybe that is the reason why people who don't have an easy time filtering between the good and bad advice find it very difficult to trust anything that they see in the space. So that could be one of the reasons why many people have this mindset, nobody knows what to do, and ignores the hundreds or maybe thousands of people by now who very well know what to do and have tremendous success with it.
This is why we give you direction in this format here, in this podcast. So if you're unsure about what to do, just always come back to this podcast and you will get the best of the best advice in the industry. I have a final question around Claude because I found it interesting, maybe to the extent you can share it, because you described the complexity of tracking Claude with the required login. How do you try to solve it? Like, how are you because there has been a lot of discussion in the past about ChatGPT monitoring, for example, where some tools were still using the API, and other tools like, as for example, Peec AI, have a way more sophisticated mechanism with proxy servers, etc. Also something that differentiates Peec AI from other competitors that just add in Germany to the prompt to track something in Germany. But letting that aside, so maybe, as I said, to the extent you can share, how do you think about solving this complexity with Claude?
I don't believe in running an army of accounts to do scraping. You can maybe do that for one data study, but we are building an analytics product here with a promise that people get their data every single day, and some of them even multiple times per day. And for that, you need redundancy and you need safety. So for us, for Claude, the only option right now is the API.
Fair answer. I think it's also something that creates trust if we have transparency about how very important players in the industry, as for example, an analytics platform like Peec AI, how you handle stuff. So very interesting. Let's quickly shift over to this somehow old player, ChatGPT. Like Claude is now the new kid on the block, the cool kid, and then ChatGPT is somehow the boomer. No, just kidding. But there has been a lot of rumor, or I would say discussions, and also some profound research around ChatGPT changing its way of handling the fan node queries with, I think, either GPT 5.3 or 5.4. Can you give us a quick rundown of what happened there, or what supposedly happened?
Yeah, so two things happened. One is that GPT 5.3, which is the default for free users and non-logged-in users, is hiding the fan-out queries. And then in 5.1, 5.2, we could see them. 5.3 in one version of the model actually only. They are gone. And then in 5.4, they are there again. And the 5.4 fan-out queries are different from the ones we've seen before. They use site searches a lot more often. That was a very rare thing in the past, and now it's almost like the standard. And there are much more fan-out queries than before, at least for paying logged-in users. I have actually not analyzed it too much for logged-in non-paying users. And yeah, that's the change. And of course, the change with the site search brings in potential biases, because if I ask for the best TV, and then I will now give a random example. I don't know, Walmart is with a site search in there. They have much more influence than everybody else, right? Or think it's even Samsung who has obviously a very clear bias in the TV space of who has the best TV. So if there's a Samsung.com site search, even though Samsung wasn't mentioned in the original prompt, that is an issue. And to a small degree, this brand bias has happened in the past. So it sometimes happened, you had a prompt like best sneakers, and one of the fan out queries would be best sneakers Adidas. That's of course a crazy advantage for Adidas, right? Because all of the results that now come in will be about Adidas. It's a problem for Nike and anybody else. And with this, it was usually old established brands like Adidas and Nike having an advantage over On Running or Skechers, for example, because they were in this fan out query, which suggests that the fan out queries were generated by an LLM that did not perform web search, but just quickly generated them based on model knowledge. So older established brands had an advantage. One thing I find very interesting about the fan out query topic is that with site search, there are always people who say, ChatGPT is not based on Google, don't say it. They use Exa and Tavili. And maybe they use them for some things, but Exa doesn't support site search, as far as I know. And I didn't check it for Tavili, how that thing works. But this is another strong indication that Google is still being used. And I actually validated this also again yesterday when I trigger a lot of prompts. And now you have the hourly view in Google Search Console, right? You immediately see the spike in impressions if you target a specific domain with the prompts. So it's another validation that Google is the major source for grounding in ChatGPT. So that is for me actually the most interesting part that's coming out of these fan out queries.
And now, as always, you perfectly described what is happening. What do you think why that is? Why there is this brand bias and why there is the site search now suddenly being used more and more?
So I think the site search makes it faster, because I've had the theory for a very long time that ChatGPT often only uses the search snippet for grounding. They don't always retrieve the actual URL. And I can't prove it, of course, but I believe something similar is happening here. They will, for many, many queries from the search snippet in Google, they will get all the information they need. And with site search, they can more focus this on specific domains where they believe on this domain the information is hidden that I need. And for many prompts, you can make a reasonable guess that this is true, right? If you want to know about USB ports of TVs, you could do a site search for Samsung, Hisense, a few other, Sony, LG, and try to guess that based on just the snippet that is attached to each URL. So I think it's about saving time and saving money, and working around people who block LLMs, because major news publishers are very actively blocking LLMs, depending on which statistic you believe and which country. Something like 25 to 50% of news publishers are blocking ChatGPT. So getting around that by just doing a site search on their domain is pretty good approach, I think.
So just to get this right, your hypothesis was that if ChatGPT performs the grounding process, it just looks at the search snippet, meaning the meta title and the meta description? Or maybe if there are other snippets, like rich snippets added to it? Or
So I think they look at the whole rich snippet, which is the reason why certain structured data is good for LLMs. My hypothesis is not that they always do this, by the way, right? Like, obviously they retrieve content, but my hypothesis is that especially for domains that block them, they sometimes still cite that domain just based on the snippet. So yes, it's primarily title, and if Google displays the meta description. But in many cases, especially for the kind of fan-out queries ChatGPT is running, it will not be the meta description. It will be an extract from the search result.
And what do you think how ChatGPT comes up basically with their brand ranking or the brand relevance, so to say? So if they want to look at Walmart or want to look at whatever, where does it come from? So does it come from foundational knowledge, or is it also somehow connected to search and the relevance in search? So because I can imagine a lot of people asking themselves, okay, so what do I take from it? Like, how can I somehow be the brand that is then part of the brand bias of ChatGPT?
Yeah, I think we need to also differentiate between brand and website here. With the like site search, it's websites, right? Not brands specifically. Honestly, I don't know. And I also think there is limited value in overly focusing on this question. Because it would only be interesting if it gave you a very clear prioritization what to do. But the reality is that whatever is happening is probably influenced by who is the most dominant brand, who is the most well-perceived brand, who is the most authoritative brand, or what website is the most important one for typical searches. What they are doing here, I have no idea. I have many hypotheses. They could have just some machine learning model trained for it. They could use a very simple LLM that uses the model knowledge, but they could also use clickstream data from search engines like Google. And they could have learned, hey, for fashion, these 3 domains are the most clicked ones after a Google search. So we should look at them with a site search. Like there are so many ideas how they could build this. And this is happening right now. We have no idea what will happen in GPT 5.5. Like, there was a time when fan-out queries last year, November, became much, much longer. They looked more like a list of keywords that you would use for vector retrieval. Then around Christmas, they became a little bit shorter again and have stayed stable. Like, they went basically from 6 words to 16 words down to 12. And now we have something new with much more site search, but stuff can change again. And I would not encourage people to now massively change their strategy because of this. I would encourage people to think about, why are they doing this? They want to quickly retrieve information. They want to cheaply retrieve information. They want trusted sources. So just provide these 3 things and you will be good with GPT-5, GPT-6, whatever. I have never been a fan of over-optimizing for the status quo, because that means after every change, you will run behind it. The only exception is if you are hyper-focused on aggressive SEO, probably with temporary results, probably you are a spammer, then it can make sense to try to exactly understand how it works right now to get the absolute maximum out of it. But for something that could change again in 3 months, I would not obsess over it.
A quick note from me, don't be a spammer. But a final question around the funnel queries and the site search. Do you have any data on how frequent or like what is the share of site search within the funnel query set? Because I just want to prevent that people think that basically every funnel query is now a site search. So like how relevant is it in the funnel query set?
I don't have reliable data that I trust on that one.
Okay. But you would say that probably it's not every single fan-out query.
I know that it's not every single fan-out query. I have a couple of prompts running, like what does this website on this URL or on their homepage say about this topic? Or what do they say what does this author on that website say, or what does the article published on a certain date say. Even with that, there is not always a site search. And I mean, it would be obvious to run a site search for these prompts. So even if you try to force it, there's not always a site search.
Okay. Now, I saw a post from you. Maybe you wrote it from vacation, because there is a picture with you standing in front of like sunny river, like waterside. Maybe it's Florida. I don't know. But or can you quickly tell us where the picture is from?
Yeah, I mean, you mean the picture where it says "I love PR"?
Exactly right.
It's in Puerto Rico. And the PR refers to Puerto Rico. I thought it was
Awesome.
obvious, but okay, apparently it was not obvious for everyone.
Yeah, maybe if I would have put in 30 seconds more thoughts, I would have, honestly, I questioned even if it might be an AI generated picture that you just generated for your post. But yeah, this is the level we have reached with AI. But honestly, I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have any negative feelings if it would have been AI generated. But back to the point. Your post starts with, I used to think technical SEO was the future. I no longer believe that. For LLM visibility, digital PR matters more than most marketers realized. And now digital PR has been talk of the town for quite some time, I would say. And I still see a lot of people struggling with okay, where can I start? What is the digital aspect of PR? So why not PR? What is the differentiation? So I'd like to just ask you, what would you give people as advice if they see the relevance and understand that they have to do something for digital PR, but they just have a hard time to think about where to start?
Yeah, I mean, with your own website, I still believe tech SEO is for many companies the more important thing. But with AI visibility, you are very dependent on third-party sources. And technical SEO just doesn't get you on third-party sources, right? So, and you need to get there somehow. And then digital PR is one of the best tools to do that. And it has to be digital PR because you want to get into the digital version of the New York Times. I mean, also getting an article in the New York Times is great for like brand perception and everything, but you want to be in the digital media outlets and you want to be in the ones that actually give access to LLMs. And yeah, their digital PR is just a good way to do it. An important caveat is not enough to just pay a random PR agency to get you coverage. Because depending on what kind of prompts you want to be known for, it could be that press releases, interviews, articles about you are not the content format that is being cited, right? If you want to be listed, if you want to be known for prompts like what's the fastest car, you actually have to be in the articles, 10 fast cars, right? In these typical listicles. So just pouring money into PR and just doing some digital PR will not necessarily get you in there. I think people need to look for agencies that have a strong PR capability in that regard, but that also have this, I call it the SEO mindset. Maybe we now need to call it the AEO, GEO mindset, that look at the sources, track prompts, make a strategy specifically for that, and don't just do any PR, which is still can be positive, but will not have that desired effect of increasing AI search visibility. For that, you need a fusion of PR agency and AI search, or PR agency and SEO agency to get a good result. And there are many out there, many good ones. But I'm also very, very sure many people now just pour money into digital PR without getting the AI search results that they hoped for.
So basically, I would approach it in a similar way as I approach it for potential on-site optimizations. I have a hopefully meaningful prompt set running. I analyze it. I look at the sources. I get an understanding how the LLM or how the AI chatbot comes up with its answer. And then I identify opportunities. For example, third-party websites like a niche blog or a certain publisher in like the tech space or in the marketing space, whatever. If you would think about how can I improve the visibility for Peec AI, for example, around best AI search analytics platform, and then you check if there is an angle or an opportunity, and there an experienced PR professional can help you because they are trained and experienced in finding these angles on how you can become part of this publication, or would you say if there's not an option to become part of the very article that is already cited, that it's worthwhile thinking about, can I get my own article or an article that is favorable for me in the same domain or the same outlet?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, often it's not possible to be included in an existing article unless it's run by the commercial content team, not the journalistic team of the newspaper. And yeah, it's. I think I would look at two things primarily: what domains are being cited and what content formats are being cited, and then try to get into future content formats, like future content pieces on those formats. So if articles are never cited, if it's always listicles, get into future listicles. If it's company profiles with in-depth review, you need one of those, etc., etc. So also pay attention to that. Or if it's top of funnel prompts, maybe it's how-to guides that get cited, and then you must get somehow mentioned in future how-to guides. So just look at that. And these content formats can really be very, very different depending on your prompt set, the prompt intent, the topic, etc., etc.
Awesome. Malte, I think we already did a good job in optimizing time to value, or like value in time for people listening to this. Is there anything left where we feel like it's top of mind for you and something that we didn't talk about that we should have talked about, or that you would like viewers, listeners to think about or to like take with from this episode?
I think we covered everything. I can quickly reveal that the I Love PR picture is heavily AI edited. So I actually took it, but there were people and there was a cruise ship in the background. So I changed it very significantly. So yeah, it was a mixture between real and AI. But I was actually there at the I Love PR sign and took a picture.
But then you were smart enough to edit it with AI, then download it, and then take a screenshot of it, so we don't have this digital AI watermark that would have allowed to see this little credential icon in the top left corner on LinkedIn? Or did you use a tool that doesn't have this?
I'm pretty sure there is a AI watermark hidden in it. I mean, probably not visible to human eye, but I do assume that Google would know that it's AI because I use Gemini.
Because Google knows everything.
And screenshots don't help, as far as I know, to get rid of the Google imaging AI watermark if you look at how it's done.
I think it's just for ChatGPT. It was the case for ChatGPT, but honestly, I don't know. Malte has been super insightful. Thanks for doing this. Already looking forward to the next one. And yeah, all the best for you. And definitely, guys and girls, if you listen to this and you want to stay on the cutting edge of everything AI search, follow Malte on LinkedIn, follow Peec AI, follow Malte's team who publish great research. It's always very insightful, so highly recommended from my side. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
See you.
Bye-bye.